Well, hello and welcome to the latest video on my career playlist. Now this video is a big one, okay, because it features one of the all-time greats, the Scotch Wop Johnny Dundee, who had well over 300 fights. A career that can barely be comprehended really when you look at some fighters now who are having 20 or 30 fights over a 15 to 20 year period. And you look at someone like Johnny Dundee with what he did, the ridiculous routine of fights he had. It beggars belief, really. So let us begin, okay, with his major opponents. This major opponent breakdown is, I'll just say, a multi-slide experience. So let's start slide 1. Okay, of his main opponent breakdown. Now, he twice fought the great featherweight king, okay, the long-reigning featherweight lineal champion Johnny Kilbane, suffering one loss and one draw from 2 fights. Next up is great former lightweight, and to me, the greatest Welsh fighter of all time, above Jimmy Wilde, the Welsh wizard Freddie Welsh. Good evening, Mike. Good to see you, buddy. So he's already fought 2 Hall of Famers there, okay. Next up, a third one, Rocky Kansas, the tough former lightweight champion. Now, Johnny Dundee fought Rocky Kansas on 6 occasions, scoring 3 wins with 2 losses and 1 draw. And he also twice fought former world champion and Hall of Famer Willie Ritchie, okay, going unbeaten against him, scoring 1 win and 1 draw from 2 fights. Yeah, big shout out to Josh Taylor and Drunk Irishman as well. Now, next up is an 8-fight series with Benny Leonard, okay. Now, you look at the top 5 names, Kilbane, Freddie Welsh, Kansas, Willie Ritchie and Benny Leonard, and the number of fights against those 5 men alone, he's already done a modern career, in some ways surpassed it. He scored 2 wins, 4 losses and 2 draws. Next up, former champion Matt Wells. Johnny Dundee fought him twice and beat him both times. And he also beat former lightweight champion and tough lightweight fighter Jimmy Goodrich. Next up, former champion Jack Bernstein. Okay, Johnny Dundee fought him on 3 occasions, scored him 1 win with 2 losses and no draws. And then he also scored a win against another excellent fighter, French fighter Eugene Creaky. Scoring a win. Then the great lightweight champion Sammy Mandel. Okay, Johnny Dundee lost to Mandel in a singular fight. He also lost to Steve Kid Sullivan, another former champion, and he lost to former super featherweight champion and now Hall of Famer Todd Morgan. Next up, the great Tony Canzoneri was also a defeat for Johnny Dundee, as was his singular fight with Charlie Phil Rosenberg. The final name, okay, on this first slide, okay, is Cannonball Eddie Martin, whom Johnny Dundee beat. Big shout out to Bruce Gass as well in the chat. So there's his first slide, already a major names and lots of fights on there, but like I pointed out with Johnny Dundee, his career is immense. His just everything about his career is immense. So let us go to slide 2. Okay, now on slide 2, he has a 7-fight series with Hall of Famer, and sometimes I question that, but Hall of Famer George K.O. Cheney, one of the knockout punchers of his time, Johnny Dundee fought him on 7 occasions, scoring 6 wins with no losses and 1 draw. Now, he did fight a trilogy of fights. He lost all 3 to the great southpaw Lou Tenderler, and then he also twice fought the vicious, aggressive Teddy, Sid Terris, top lightweight contender at 1920s. Okay, Johnny Dundee loses to him twice from 2 fights. He also loses to Dick Finnegan, before then also losing to former pound-for-pound rated tough fighter himself, with an incredibly tough resume, Joe Glick. He then fights contender Saley Friedman, fighting to a draw, and then also defeats contender Harry Kid Brown. Next is Peppermint Vincent Martin. Okay, Johnny Dundee fought him on 2 occasions, scoring 2 wins from 2 fights. He also then scored singular wins over Tommy O'Brien and Basil Galliano. Next up is Tony Vaccarelli. Now, Tony Vaccarelli, okay, was a very good fighter himself. Johnny Dundee fought him on 3 occasions, scoring 1 win with 2 losses and no draws. And a number of these fighters, these were rated fighters, okay. Now, Johnny Dundee fought these in the latter portion of his career. You know, when he was fighting through the 1910s, a lot of these fights came fighting from 1920 onwards, because he did have a huge career. So Eddie Wagner is next. Eddie Wagner, okay, defeated Johnny Dundee, as did former contender Sid Barbarian. Next up is former top 10 Luis Vicentini. Okay, Johnny Dundee defeated him, and then he also lost to former rated opponent Charlie O'Connell. So a second slide with a lot more fights. Okay, let's go to slide 3. Now on slide 3, okay, he fights and loses to Red Chapman. He then fights and defeats Allentown Johnny Leonard in a singular fight, before then losing singular fights to contender Hilario Martinez, Eddie Wolf and Al Foreman. Next up, Frankie Fleming. Johnny Dundee fights Fleming on 2 occasions, scoring 2 wins. And then he has a 7-fight series with very tough fighter, very good fighter, Joe Shagru. Okay, now Johnny Dundee scores 4 wins with only 1 loss and 2 draws against the excellent Shagru, who I don't think I've done his video yet, but you will get a video on him. Next up is Tommy O'Toole. Okay, Johnny Dundee fights him to a draw, and then he also fights and loses to young Johnny Cohen. Now Paddy Callahan is next. Johnny Dundee defeats him in a singular fight, and then he fights Tommy Hook in a trilogy. Now Johnny Dundee scores 2 wins with no losses and 1 draw, and then he fights one of the UK's, I call him one of the UK's great fighters, and to me he should be in the Hall of Fame. Now he doesn't get much credit, Charlie White, because he was never a world champion, but he was one of the toughest lightweight contenders of his time, and when you look at his career, scored more than his fair share of excellent wins. Now Johnny Dundee fought Charlie White in a 7-fight series. He scored 3 wins with 3 losses and 1 draw. He also scored singular wins over Patsy Cline and Matt Brock, before closing out this slide with a trilogy against tough contender Philadelphia Pal Moore. Johnny Dundee scores 2 wins with 1 loss and no draws. So that is the 3rd slide. Okay, let us go. We're not done yet by far. Let us go to slide 4. Now on slide 4, okay, he fights Frankie Conley, scoring a win. He then also scores 2 wins over Jack White, before fighting to a draw against Johnny Griffiths. Next up is the excellent Joe Mandot. Okay, Dundee fought him on 4 occasions with no wins, 2 losses and 2 draws, and he also fought and defeated Grover Hayes, before then fighting Willie Beecher to a draw. Now former top lightweight contender Mexican Joe Rivers. Johnny Dundee fought him on 3 occasions, scoring wins in all 3 fights. He then fights and loses to the Sheriff of Lockport, Jimmy Duffy, in a singular fight, before then also defeating Leech Cross. He scored 2 wins from 3 fights, with 1 draw included against Richie Mitchell, and then he fought Stanley Yoakum, okay, scoring a win. Next up is Eddie Wallace. Johnny Dundee fought him 6 times, scoring 4 wins with no losses and 2 draws, and then he had an 8-fight series. One of his rivals in long fight series is Joe Welling. Now Dundee scored 3 wins with 4 losses and 1 draw. Johnny Dundee then scored 2 wins over Ever Hammer, before scoring 5 wins from 5 fights against Jimmy Hanlon. So that is slide 4 of his major opponents. Slide 4 already. Now, as you can tell, there's large fight series on every slide. Okay, on this slide we've got the 5 fights with Hanlon, the 8 fights with Joe Welling. On the last slide we had the 7 fights with Charlie White. You know, we've had 7 fight series with George K.O. Cheney, the 8 fight series with Benny Leonard. So after 4 slides he has amassed a massive number of fights being highlighted. But let us go on to the next slide. Now this is slide 5. Okay, now he has an 11-fight series with Willie Jackson. Now Dundee scored 2 wins with 5 losses and 4 draws from those 11 fights. He also fights Patsy Cline on 2 occasions, scoring no wins, 1 loss and 1 draw. And then he has a 4-fight series with Johnny Ray, scoring 1 win with 1 loss and 2 draws. Next up is the capable Frankie Britt. Johnny Dundee fought him on 6 occasions, scoring 4 wins, no losses and 2 draws. He then defeated Harry Carlson in a singular fight, before then scoring 2 wins over Billy Defoe. Next up, Ralph Brady. Dundee fought him on one occasion, okay, suffering a defeat, and then Johnny Dundee scored 4 wins, okay, against contender Joe Tiplitz. Next up is Gussie Lewis, okay, Johnny Dundee defeated him, and then he also gained a win over excellent fighter, very capable fighter Lou Bogash, in a singular fight. Next up is Mel Coogan. Johnny Dundee fought him 3 times, scoring no wins with 2 losses and 1 draw. And then next up is Frankie Rice and Danny Frush. Johnny Dundee defeated both men in singular fights, and then he lost to Alex Hart. And the final fight on here, okay, to former contender Al Schubert. Johnny Dundee also suffers a defeat. So another mass more fights. So let us go on to the final slide 6 of his main opponents, and Johnny Dundee fights and defeats Gaston Charles. So that is a massive amount of fights. In fact, there are 173 fights highlighted there, which puts him right in Sam Langford territory in total number. Now, I don't think he had the tougher fight runs and fought the number of great fighters as much as Langford did. But in overall numbers of fights I'm highlighting, he's in Langford territory, which is not surprising because Langford had a 300 fight career just over, and Johnny Dundee had over a 300 fight career as well. So with Dundee mixing in good company, I would expect him to have a very high number. So from those 173 fights highlighted there, Johnny Dundee scored 86 wins with 56 losses and 31 draws. I've always argued, one of the things that really gets me is there are no ratings for what I call the pre-rating era. And if there were, then I could give you all the accurate numbers. But it's fair to say, regardless of no ratings being around, it's fair to say Johnny Dundee's numbers, like Greb's, like Langford's, like Britain's, and other fighters, would be astronomically high. They would easily well hit over 100 fighters, fights in rated opponents, easily. The level of opposition was just too good. So there's his basic, well, I call it a basic career breakdown. Going on to slide 6 is not basic. But let us switch now onto the first of his stat slide, and some of his other stats are crazy. Now, Johnny Dundee scored 21 knockouts, 10 of them in 3 rounds or less, and 4 in the first round. Now, he scored 0 KOs against champions, 0 KOs against Hall of Famers, and 0 KOs against pounders. He also scored 0 KOs against rated fighters. Now, in rounds boxed, okay, Johnny Dundee has an astronomical number of professional career rounds, coming in not over 2,000 but over 3,000, with a total career rounds of 3,152. I mean, that is an incredible number of career rounds. Fighting all the different styles, the boxers, the movers, the punchers. His ring experience was vast. Now, he fought 149 title fight rounds, Dundee, and he also fought 343 rounds against champions. Next up is Hall of Famers. Johnny Dundee fought 335 rounds against Hall of Famers, and he fought 325 rounds against pound fighters. Now, I haven't done Rosenblum's video on this channel yet, but people who caught it on my last channel will remember, you may remember, the insane number of rounds against top 10 fighters, etc., that Rosenblum scored. Now, we don't have accurate numbers for Dundee's rounds boxed against rated opponents because ratings didn't exist for most of his career. Okay, but he still manages 490 rounds against top 10 fighters, 354 rounds against top 3 fighters, and 205 rounds against ring champions. So basically what numbers he would have scored would have been astronomical. You know, when you've got a resume like that, you are going to have an astronomical number of rounds against rated fighters, as you will see when I redo Rosenblum's video on this channel. So there's his KOs and rounds box. Now going on to the slide featuring champions. Johnny Dundee had 32 fights against champions, with actually a losing record in there, interestingly enough. He scored 12 wins with 15 losses and 5 draws, and Johnny Dundee defeated 8 individual champions. They were Rocky Kansas, Willie Ritchie, Benny Leonard, Matt Wells, Jimmy Goodrich, Jack Bernstein, Eugene Creaky, and Cannonball Eddie Martin. Now, Johnny Dundee scored no KOs against champions, so his champions knocked out individually is 0. So when we go on to the Hall of Fame category for Dundee, we see he had more fights against Hall of Famers than champions, with a total of 35. Now he scored 13 wins with 16 losses and 6 draws against those Hall of Famers, and he defeated 5 individual Hall of Famers. They were Rocky Kansas, George K.O. Cheney, Willie Ritchie, Benny Leonard and Eugene Creaky. He of course fought other Hall of Famers like Sid Terrace, etc, etc. So from those 5 Hall of Famers defeated individually, he scored no knockouts against Hall of Famers, so he knocked out 0 Hall of Famers individually. So on to the pound for pound category. Dundee had 31 fights against pound for pounders with a record of 7 wins, 19 losses and 5 draws. He defeated 4 individual pound for pounders: Rocky Kansas, Willie Ritchie, Benny Leonard and Jack Bernstein, and again, like the champions and Hall of Famers, he scored 0 KOs against pound for pounders, so pound for pounders knocked out is 0. So on to our next slide. Okay, rated opponents now. Again, Johnny Dundee's numbers would have been astronomical, and also when you look at his fights against rated opponents, we have to remember a lot of the rated opponents were in the latter part of his career, so he picked up a lot of defeats. He would have also scored a lot of wins earlier through his career, as well as picking up more defeats. So from his career as we have it, the ratings as we have it, he had 47 fights against top 10 fighters, which is small compared to what it would have been, but I can't hypothesize. I don't believe in it, and I don't like everybody citing opinion as fact, which is why I don't speculate on what his true numbers would have been. I list the actual numbers. So against top 10 he scored 15 wins with 27 losses and 5 draws. Now from his small portion of his career where he fought rated opponents, he still manages 34 fights against top 3 fighters, including 8 wins, 23 losses and 3 draws, and he has 21 fights against ring champions, equaling 6 wins, 12 losses and 3 draws. So Johnny Dundee, even from a portion of his career being in rated era, he defeated 11 individual rated fighters, and he scored knockouts over 0 individual rated fighters. So on to title record now. Johnny Dundee had 11 world title fights, with a record of 7 wins, 3 losses and 1 draw. Dundee made 3 title defences and he scored 1 title fight KO. Now, he scored 0 wins against top 10 fighters, top 3 fighters or ring champions in title fights. He scored 2 wins against champions in title fights, 2 wins against Hall of Famers in title fights, and 1 win against a pound for pounder in a title fight. So when we go on to the final slide, titles won for this all-time great. Johnny Dundee captured the NSAC featherweight title. He also was world featherweight title holder, and he was also a 2-time world super featherweight title holder. Lineal titles Johnny Dundee held. He held the lineal featherweight title and 2-time super featherweight lineal titles. He was also undisputed featherweight champion and 2-time undisputed super featherweight champion. So there ends the career on a true all-time great, a man whose career is so vast and large, and some of the years activity he had was crazy. There's Johnny Dundee. There are many big fighters to come, you know, Maxi Rosenblum, you know, amongst others, coming in the future videos over the next year. But yeah, Johnny Dundee certainly stands out as having one of the most ridiculous careers I have ever seen, barring a few names. You know, really barring a few names. So anyway, there's the video for Johnny Dundee. Meanwhile, on another note, before I get off, I've been uploading some graph charts, okay, showing the pound for pound points, the most pound for pound points scored over each decade. Okay, that playlist will continue, but I'm also now in fights against Hall of Famers or something. I'm planning a bigger one, okay, a bigger graph chart that will stretch from 1890 to now. Okay, so that'll be a much bigger video, maybe 8 to 10 minutes, and I'll track something all through boxing history from when I covered it in my ratings database from 1890 to now. So whether that's whatever it is, okay, it's going to be across all the eras, so you'll see the fighters come and go through time, the new fighters, the great fighters from the following periods coming in, and where they score all the way through to modern times. So I'm going to get working on that. I'm going to get more of the decade pound for pound race charts done first, then I will work on a big one. So you'll be able to sit there and watch the graph and the names for a number of minutes. So anyway, there's Johnny Dundee. I'll now score him into my new top 1,000. I'm curious where he goes because the ratings have been amended. So there are some things factored, some things not factored now, many other things factored that weren't factored before as I try to round out the ratings criteria. So I'm very curious where it goes. But yep, further videos coming in the coming days, weeks, months and years on my channel as I push to my goal of hitting over 1,000 career videos. I've got a long way to go, but I will get there. I'm the Boxing Librarian. I'm out for now.